Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And I am Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
We did. Oh, also,
TMNT.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Oh, yeah, this is going to come out on New Year's.
This is day 3 of the new year, I think. So welcome to 2021. How are we feeling? Is everything changed in an instant at the stroke of the night? I hope so. Knowing full well that won't be the case. Yeah.
Hopefully.
We'll see what happens. But anyways, new year, new us, I guess. Are we right? Oh, that was garbage. We watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And yeah, I don't really have a history with the brand that is TMNT.
Really?
I'm familiar with its existence in memory, never really nostalgic for it because I never really had any history with it. But I knew it was cool, and I knew that like I'd seen some of the cartoons, like I knew about it, but I just never I hadn't seen either of these movies or any of like the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that came after the one that we covered. Yeah, I have like almost no history with them.
I am the opposite.
Love.
I watched the cartoon growing up.
Obsessed.
So that was cool.
Love.
I just loved pizza, loved turtles. So it's Natch, right? But I also have vague memories of like watching the films coming out too. But like I was more about the cartoon. Like I mean I was more about the cartoon with like everything, with like X-Men and Batman, the animated series and all of that. Like I liked the animations. I don't know why. But like watching this was wild because like so I remember like the 90s ones and I remember them being like kind of bad. I tried to watch the first one like in the past, like sometime in the past year, and I was like, oh god, I don't know if I could do this, and I ended up turning it off like within the first like 10 minutes. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. I don't know, like it wasn't hitting like the vibe, the mood that I was like going for. It was for sure. It wasn't hitting that, right? So I was like, all right, whatever. And then I absolutely refused to watch the new one, right? Because all the shit from like, you know, oh, cool. So Michael Bay, Transformers, Megan Fox, all gonna just pivot over to this other thing. Hey, member, you know? And I was like, okay, this is boring. And I don't like this. And I was just incredibly against it. There was like a time in my life where I was like, why do you need to remake anything? Because like the original was perfect, which we know it's not.
It's
but
not
like,
true.
And especially like being a woman in like gaming and nerd areas, right? Like if you like, you know, I mean, that's not the case now, but like if you were to say something like, oh, I'm kind of excited for this, right? Like you would be like burned at the stake, right? Because it's like, oh, well, you're not a true fan and oh, whatever, like any sort of criticism or any sort of like, you know, it's like, oh, do you know the Turtles' 4 names? Like if you're a woman liking anything, especially like, so I kind of like, I subscribe to that too, that like, you know, very gatekeepery kind of nerddom out of like a sense of like self-preservation or like just fitting in or something. And being a part of any subculture, it's hard to not sort of ascribe to that kind of a mentality. It's hard to distance yourself from it because part of being a part of said subculture is trying your best to fit in and feel or gain like the confidence of others in yourself. And so if you're coming out of the gate swinging and being like, actually, I really like this, and actually, and it's like, oh, whoa, actually, I love the Crystal Skull. They're gonna be like, oh, hold on, sorry, exactly.
Excuse me.
And it's like there weren't a lot of women that I knew growing up, or like a lot of my peers were not women because they were not as interested in these kind of things and these kinds of stories or video games or whatever. So like, yeah, it was not great. And I'm so glad that I've evolved and grown past all of that, and being able to like just really look at these things and these stories for what they are is is lovely and a treat. And I still, like, it's so funny because, like, sometimes I'll like post, like, hey, look at, we released this episode. And people, like, some people will just, like, actively not engage because they are just so afraid of criticism or like, how dare you go off about this? You know, it's wild how protective and toxic some of this, like, fandom is, and a lot of the fandom that, you know, I grew up in Orange County, California. What up? Ugh. So glad I'm not there anymore. But yeah, so, like, that's kind of why I was always like, I do not want to watch TMNT, the new one. That's bullshit. Why would they remake this? Also, like, why Megan Fox? Why this? You know, and because, like, also in Transformers, I also refuse to watch Transformers. But, like, there was
Have you seen it?
I haven't, no.
Love.
And, like, I just know, like, the, you know, and this is me being ignorant, right? Like, I just knew that Megan Fox was in it and she was there to be the it girl or, like, the, you know, just the sex appeal or whatever. And I fucking hate that because, like, to me, that always, like, created, like, this double standard growing up of, like, oh, cool, if you're going to be in these stories or engage in that, this is what you need to look like and this is what you need to be. And it was just a really bad representation of that. So, yeah, anyways, this is a whole long thing to say, like, well, I didn't engage with these things because it didn't feel like they were made for me. And now, after having watched the remake, I am so glad I did.
Really? Oh, see, I feel like we have interest. This will be fun. I do want to point out, is this not the perfect IP for this podcast? Mm-hmm. Like, when we started, we talked about movies like this, where it's like, literally, they are simply doing this as a nostalgia grab. It's very obvious, like, because some of them are a little bit more subtle, where it's like, oh, a reinterpretation or like a new iteration of, whereas this, no. Let's get the guy who was famous for transforming and that other original IP into this multi-billion-dollar franchise. Let's get him to do that with this other IP of the same time period. Boom. Let's go. It's just,
what's changed about the formula? Nothing.
It's literally a cash grab. The lighting's garbage. Let's just make it an action thing with very little dialogue. And it's like, yeah, go off. Do it. Yeah. You did it. You went there.
I mean, that's how I felt about the first one. I did like the second one a lot, and a lot of it has to do with Megan Fox specifically.
Really? Okay. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about it.
Shall we get into it?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
In 1990s New York, reporter April O'Neil sets out to investigate her theory that a new crime syndicate is behind the rise of recent thefts in the city. After witnessing one of these thefts firsthand, she is attacked and saved by a man-sized turtle with sweet ninja moves named Raphael, who takes her back to his hideout where she meets the rest of the turtle group: Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and their sensei master, Splinter, a large ninja rat. Meanwhile, the crime syndicate known as the Foot Clan continues to recruit young boys throughout the city to do their bidding by promising them a safe space to do boy things like play video games, skateboard, play poker, drink booze, and smoke? Okay.
Dang, go off. The Turtles hang out with April and become fast friends. However, her apartment is destroyed by the Foot Clan, as is the Turtles' secret hideout, forcing them to leave the city with newcomer Casey Jones. The crew regroup at April's country house and come back to the city ready to save their master, who was taken hostage at some point, I guess. Then there's a big old fight and another big old fight. Splinter is saved, a monologue, and another big old fight. But eventually the day is saved and everyone is A-okay. Feelings are bad and your dad loves you, I guess? Whatever. Cowabunga dudes!
So I want to get into something first and foremost. I did a little, I mean, it's not that big of research, but the term cowabunga, do you know where that comes from?
No.
Okay. So I know it's not like perpetuated in this IP. So it originated on the Howdy Doody show. On the Howdy Doody show, there was a character named Chief Thunderthud. So this was a Native American character in the show that was played by obviously a white person. And again, it's like it's some of this like history that like, I mean, it's just a word that's not associated with really anything, right? But white actor, it was sort of the portrayal of Native Americans. Oftentimes when he was on the show, he was like regularly being tricked, and that was like part of the shtick. He would make up words and claim that it was part of Native American culture, including being the chief of the, however you pronounce kangaroo spelled backwards, to make it sound like a Native American term. So it's really just degradation of Native people. It's super crazy. Yeah. Anyways, Howdy Doody, shout out. But one of his things, he would say cow and then something else to make it sound like a Native word. And cowabunga was one of the words that he made up. And so in the history of the word, it became adopted as surfer lingo because several histories have claimed from several different sources that the word was adopted by a lot of Native Hawaiian surfers who at that time really identified with the show Howdy Doody. And it sort of just became surfer lingo that was like synonymous with like righteous or like sick or like this is awesome. Like I love this. And then that's literally just how it was adapted into general vernacular. So there is a history with Howdy Doody, but then it's sort of co-opted into just meaning like cool or righteous, which was like cool surfer thing. And then because that was just a regular piece of general lexicon, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it was like, oh yeah, for sure. Cowabunga, righteous.
That's wild. I had
Isn't that crazy?
idea.
I know. It's
oh my gosh.
Super nuts. But again, it's one of those things that like in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's not like used with malintent. It literally is used in the way that it's a co-opted term that means something completely different, completely devoid of its problematic history. But even still, there is that problematic history there that it like is. I mean, again, it's really like, it's so weird that term just comes directly from colonialism as an idea of like clowning Native American people, stealing and killing them. Like it's such an innocuous word. It's so what appears to be so PG and so relatively meaningless, right? Like it feels like such a meaningless word because I mean technically it is. It means nothing. Language.
That's wild. I had no idea.
Language is well. The history of colonialism is crazy. I don't know. Have you guys heard about that? It's insane. Man, white people are fucking awful. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Thank you for letting me go on my little
Thank you for sharing.
Journey.
I would have had no idea had you not said something. Yeah.
Anyways, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Of co-opting things, right? The whole fucking premise is ninjas, right?
I know.
So the Foot Clan, they come in and they prey on like all of these young, misunderstood, mostly white boys, right?
Yeah.
And get them to like come in and like say like, look, we're your family, we'll do all this, we see you, but you gotta fight for us, right? Or you gotta steal for us. And like, because these kids feel empowered to do things that they're not told to do, like they just kind of like, what is it? It's the outside world rejects you, I am your father and this is your family now. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like, I mean, the white fathers that we see in this are terrible. So in a sense, it's like demonizing them from the get-go, like, you know, because they're the bad guys, they are foreigners and they came to this land and they're corrupting young white men, which just like that whole thing is gross. And like this whole movie is like just dripping with that. And I like that's so such a staple of the Teenage Mutant Ninja. Oh my God, I can't talk. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story, right?
Yeah.
That like it's right there in the title, so you literally can't get away from that. But this film did really beat that over the bush.
Well,
I don't know what's the saying.
No, no, they absolutely
Two birds in a
pummeled
bush
it into
with
the
a
ground.
Stone with the
Birds and stones and bushes.
They put the pigeon in the pie. What?
Yeah, I heard they threw the pie in the trash and then the pigeon died. I don't know.
No, it's the rat. Wait, okay.
It's a rat.
Anyways.
Yes. No, you're totally right. And that's what, like, I mean, is so emblematic of generally co-opting of culture, right? So like this sort of relatively acultural figure, like these acultural figures, these turtles, are then given a very particular kind of aggressively unnuanced, big air quotes, Asian thing. And then in the screenplay, in this story, that's not really addressed. But what is addressed is the demonization of every Asian character and the sort of the continued perpetual idea of like, you should be afraid of them. They're corrupting good-hearted Americans. If it wasn't for them, these young white boys would be A-okay. They're the ones being bad. They're corrupting the youth. Get rid of them. Right.
But then, yeah, and it's like, okay, so these turtles learned this is just a fucking wild movie. It's a wild premise, and I'm so excited. But like,
it's a wild IP in general.
These turtles learned ninjutsu from their rat master, who learned it from his master. Like the scene where he's like doing it in his cage, I just fucking was dying laughing.
The puppetry was great.
Oh yes. I love the puppetry in this. But then like kind of also insinuating that like these because the turtles, they're white, right? They like have whiteness exuding from them, like culturally, right? And the only thing from their master that they really take is ninjutsu, right? So then these 4 white boys are learning ninjutsu and are better at it than somebody that's practiced their whole life and like all of his people. And so it's like kind of furthering that colonialist notion that like, oh yeah, we're going to learn this and we're going to be better than you at it. And we're going to actually use this to take you down. But yeah, I didn't like, so back to why the Foot Clan prays, so they, like I said, they like go after these young boys by like literally just like giving them agency and saying like, yeah, do whatever you want. It's fine. And like, they don't address why the young men like stray from their families and their fathers in the first place. And it's because their parents aren't there, or, you know, like they don't feel cared about. They don't feel seen, any of that. But like, at the same time, like, there's just like one line of dialogue that's like, all fathers love their sons. And then like, all of a sudden, all these white kids are like, oh, somebody said that, so it's fucking true. So like, my daddy loves me. Like, this whole thing like hinges on like men and their emotions and how they deal and process them. And like, when they're not able to do so, like all it does is just lead to violence. Like this whole fucking movie happened because it was 2 men fighting over a woman, one dude not respecting her choice, and then like they both died. Like,
but isn't it funny that this movie is predicated on such a simple thing that, like, if it were to be examined in any capacity, there would be no plot, right? Yeah. There would be no movie if these guys were, like, honest or emotionally vulnerable for even, like, a minute. There would be no movie. Granted, it is believable because generally men or masculine identifying people often are that way, and it's part of the culture to not be vulnerable. Strength is not emotion, strength is physicality, and you're not supposed to be whatever. I feel like how we talk about it literally almost
fucking
like
every episode
all the time, right? But this movie is predicated on a very simple that, and without that, there would be no plot. Like you said,
exactly. And then like all of the other beats that happen and all the characters and like the lessons they learn and everything are like mostly like, beat up anybody in your path. Like when you get mad, don't show your emotions. Your daddy loves you. Don't worry about it. He doesn't have to show it. It's cool. You don't have to say sorry, and you can do and take what you want. Like, I have like basically no notes for any of the individual turtles really, like, because the only ones that really got to speak were Raphael and Leonardo, and like they pitted them against each other in this like weird duality where like Raphael is like I'm macho, and Leonardo is like, hey, but your feelings though, and like they were always just kind of like butting heads and against each other. And I don't know, like it was really weird. Like Raphael was just so like violent and easily angered, and Leo just kept trying to be like, hey, you know, like, let's talk. And then like when he would go off, he's like, okay, cool. It's just him. He needs to let off steam. It's fine. But like the way that kind of thing was presented was, it wasn't like, it was just like, he does this all the time. This is just normal. And the way that I took that was, it's just like kind of like enabling that behavior, right? So it's not just like, we're going to talk about this later. You know, like the way that people in this film deal with emotions is by either not moving forward and not moving on and not growing, or just fucking violence, right? And that goes straight back to the plot where like this woman decided that she wanted to go with somebody else and died for it. And then like Leo is punished for having emotions later, where he's like, his emotions blind him to like the situation and make him weak. And then Raphael is like the one to like save the day or whatever. Like, so it's just like, that's all put down and that's all bad, right?
Yeah. I feel like you're giving this movie way more credit than it deserves. not in like a rude way, but like I feel like you're reading so deeply into like the intention of like the emotional intent of each individual turtle, and then my reading of it was like, oh, they didn't give a shit. Like
they for sure didn't.
They didn't think about, and like it was just like, they're the turtles. Duh. One of them's horny for her. Actually, two of them are. The other one's kind of emotional. One of them's going to be the outlier. Fine.
Yeah.
Great. We're moving on. I feel like I have so little to say about this movie, for better or for worse. Like there was a lot. I mean, granted, the only interesting part of this movie was her. Largely the only woman in this movie. Mm-hmm. Granted, her shit with Casey Jones. Also, Casey Jones. What the fuck?
Fuck him. I hate him.
He
so
sucks.
Bad.
He's like so inarguably bad. And there was literally not even a single moment throughout it where I was like, oh yeah, he's cool. And she should definitely get with him. And there was never a moment where I even felt like she liked him even a little bit.
So
and
the ending was like, what?
And then at the end, she's like, just shut up and kiss me. Like, no, why?
Well, but okay, so Casey is also another, like, so the reason that I had that interpretation of Leo and Raphael is because, like, every fucking man that we see in this has these emotion issues and also has this, like, sense of moral superiority that they push on each other, right? So, like, that's, like, the struggle with the turtles, right? Which is the struggle with the masters, which is the struggle with Casey Jones, who, like, the first time that we see him, he's, like, you know, gonna beat the shit out of these kids that, like, stole something. And then, like, Raphael is like, well, actually, that's not what you should do. And how dare you? So it's like, if they don't come up with the idea or if they don't condone it, then it's automatically bad. And that brings me to, like, how destructive the binary of good and evil is. Like, that this obsession with good and bad and not allowing for nuance and not allowing for other mentalities or, like, other, like, ways of thought, like, how destructive that is, because then that automatically, like, pits everybody against each other. And if you don't think the exact same way, then you're wrong. And so, like, this movie, like, most of the conflict comes from men, because it doesn't come from women, right? Like, because there's fucking none. But, like, it's just these men trying to assert their dominance or assert what they need or what they feel onto other people and onto each other. So it's like, of course, in this movie, like, the one person that talks about emotions is going to be seen as weak, right? You know? So it's like, it was really infuriating for me because, like, also, all of these men come into April O'Neil's life and literally fuck her life up 100%.
They ruin it.
She was fine beforehand. Like, she did have daddy issues. Like, again, she even talked about her dad. Right. And like,
but she was open about it.
But she never talked about, she didn't even fucking talk about her mom. Okay. Her life was like, she worked so much. And then, like, she also did, like, this antique store because it reminded her of her dad. And, you know, like, she couldn't bring herself to get over. Okay, cool. What the fuck about your mom, though? What the fuck about this? Like, she's still, like, holding herself back because of a man. Right. And so then, like, they literally set her apartment on fire. She gets fucking fired. She is put in mortal danger this whole fucking time. And, like, she has a man problem. Like, ugh.
It also reinstills the idea that the men were right, because she loses her home, she loses her job, she loses everything. But in the end, because she went on this adventure with all of these men, she gets the big job that she wants with the super high pay.
And the raise, and this,
and the raise. She gets it all. So in the end, the men were right. They got her what she needed. I do want to go back to something that you said, and just blanket statement. I do think this is true. I think all binaries are bad.
100%.
It just, in every capacity, when it's so rigidly either A or B, that is not how people exist. That's not how humanity works. There's nuance. There's, like, it's just not true. That'll never be the case. It'll never be A or B. It'll be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Like, it'll be everything, because like people are so unique and so varied, for as specific and as disinteresting as most people are, and how a lot of people are very similar. Even within that similarity, everybody has different things and is so nuanced and personally them. Any binary fails. Any binary is bad. Any binary is wrong, because it just doesn't.
Conflict.
It causes conflict, and it doesn't work. And that goes even more to what you were saying too about vigilantism. The concept of vigilantism is so perspective based. It's this concept of like the idea of needing to be the hero, needing to save the day based on things that you perceive as good or bad. But what is your perception? What baggage do you bring to the table that skews said perspective, that articulates what it is that you think is either good or bad within this binary of good and evil, right? So within that, you're never gonna be correct. Like, Batman's fucked. Batman sucks. Like, all of these heroes who think there's like good and bad, it's such a surface level. And even some of the more like, ooh, well, he's bad, but is he bad or good? Like the sort of anti-hero aesthetic or the anti-hero sentiment when it comes to storytelling. I mean, even that's relatively uninteresting because of this expectation of a binary within it, right? Even that person, the only difference is, instead of skating directly in good, they're skating right on that line to be like, is it good or is it bad? We don't know. That's a mystery. It's like, it's not a mystery. The binary's fucked. Have fucking some nuance and articulate a more clear perspective of what humanity is. Like, are there general universal bads? Obviously. Are there general universal goods? Obviously. But that's not always the case, and it has everything to do with context. What is the context, right? Like, everything is contextual. So that's never going to be the case. I don't know. Binary bullshit is so fake and bad, and it's just to be like, it's trash. I hate it so much.
It's frustrating because I feel like everything is just based on that binary of good and evil, or of man versus woman, or of emotions versus rage. And so it's really boring, and
it's boring. It's
really
so boring.
And I hate it. And I do want to talk about April for a couple minutes, actually. Is that okay?
Let's do it.
Okay.
I love it.
So April O'Neil is an anti-cop, tough queen.
I know!
And
okay.
I love it. So go ahead.
No, the line, unfortunately, the police are the only ones to combat this wave of crime.
Yeah!
The term, unfortunately, being so loaded. I'm like, yes. And every moment she's looking at the camera. She's like, Chief, whatever your name is, you're not doing anything. So what do you expect any of us to do about it? Like, the cops are useless, and I'm going to prove it on national television. You're like, yeah, dude. Fuck these cops.
He's like trying to use like these, like when she's interviewing the police chief, he's trying to use all these big ass fancy words.
Yeah.
Like, decentralized networking plan, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, cool. More cops, right? Is that what you said? And he's like, well, blah. And so like, because she's so incredibly smart, she's like able to like fucking get in there right away and be like, oh, cool. This is what you actually said. That whole interaction was like, you know, he was like, I didn't say that. Stick to asking questions, blah, 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 right? You know, like, fuck you, you're a woman. And then you're putting words in my mouth. What do you expect me to do something for immigrants? Like, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, like, how dare you tell me to do my job? And I'm like, fucking cool.
I love how ignorant and bad cops are painted in this movie.
Yes, 100%.
It's just, it is reassuring to some degree that I'm like, oh yeah, good. The cops are not painted as good people in this. That's great. I love that. We love an honest telling of the state of policing. But even on top of that, it just makes the second half of the movie just shitty because like she's capable. She's like kind of getting to the root of it autonomously by herself. She's kind of taking care of it. She's reporting on it. She's the only one doing it. She always has the scoop. She's always being interviewed to be like the breaking news surrogate for these like so many misdeeds across the city. She's in charge of it more so than the entire police force, right? And then they just take her out of it. They just take her away from it.
They take her out of it. And then like they also like they make you know that she's smart and that she's an independent woman and that, you know, like girl power, the whole thing. Right. But the whole time she's dependent on men, this entire fucking story. Right.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like
incompetent men.
Yes.
Incompetent.
And she calls out misogyny when she sees it. Right.
Yes.
But in this almost in the same breath or just like a beat later, it feels like she's rewarding it. Right. And so like these are like when I talk about like those shitty 90s girl power movies, like, or like,
It's
you know, like
this.
moments, that's what it is, right? Because like she calls out Casey Jones for being like, hey, toots, hey, babe, hey, this. And she's like, what the fuck? Right?
She's like,
and,
fuck you. And then the swing breaks and it's a whole like, yeah, fuck him.
and then like, you know, she's like, did you take classes in sensitivity? You know, and then he like the next scene, she's like trying to rub lotion on her shoulder or something. And then he like just comes up, doesn't ask, and like just does it. And she's just like, yeah, okay. Right. And I'm like, wait, what? And then
initially she's like, what the fuck? Like, can you not ever do that to me again? Don't ever fucking touch me. Like, that's the vibe she's giving. And then in the same breath, she's like, okay, fine, do it. And it's like, no. Like, why?
Okay. Also, why the fuck is her boss coming to her house first thing in the morning, or like coming to her house at all, but then also like coming first thing in the morning when she's still in like her little PJs and the whole thing, like, and he just expects her to open the door. He expects her to do all of this. And I fucking hate that, like, the end, right, with that guy, she's just like, okay, cool, I want this, I want this, I want this. And he's like, yeah, cool, you have it, cool, you have it, cool, you have it. And it's because he knew this whole time what she was worth, but he didn't give it to her because she didn't ask for it, and because she wasn't threatening to walk away, because because like so often, like, that's how it is for a woman in our career. It's like, you know, unless you're willing to walk away, unless you're willing to do this, unless you're like, we all know that there's a wage discrepancy, and we know that it's harder for women to be promoted and stuff. And a lot of times, like, they'll use like the like, oh, well, you're a woman and childbirth and kids and the whole thing. And it's like, look, fuck off. But he knew this whole time what she was worth. And was he giving it to her? No. Instead, he was coming to her apartment and berating her all the fucking time.
Yeah, he was abusing her because I'm sure he was getting it, and to him, he can abuse her because she's a woman. And there's also in this story the level of she literally had to lose everything to get the thing that she wanted, when in fact, if any one of these male characters lost a single thing, it would be like, how fucking dare you? How dare you think that I need to lose this? I'm worth it. And it's like, I mean, she's running the show in this movie. And that's what sucks, is that, like, at the end of the day, she gets with this piece of shit guy who she literally was so disinterested in the entirety of the film. And it's now like, yeah, I got the guy, even though he's complicated. I'm like, no, he's an abusive piece of shit. Like, you've shown yourself to be capable, to not only be capable, to literally be the one running the show. You're doing a better job than literally every single character in this movie. And to just that be written into it, you're right. It's like this false sense of female empowerment. It's this false sense of like girl power motif that just resonates with, oh, a guy wrote this for sure, because the schluffy bad guy, he's kind of lovable, right? No, he's a piece of shit. And also, she doesn't need a love interest. Like, it's the
you hear that, Wonder Woman 1984?
Yeah, it's reiterating the concept of like the only way to validate any of her accomplishments is to give her some sort of love interest that stakes its claim in patriarchal societies, to say her accomplishments are now valid because I, a male presenting person, am here to validate everything that she's done. So we, and by we I mean me, because I am the pat in patriarchy. Because of that, she's good and she's accomplished. And it's like, yeah, yay. But if she was by herself, it'd be like, what's her deal? What's her problem?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah, it's, and that's the thing with this movie, is like, it felt so unintentional. Like, to me, that didn't even feel like, oh, we're like intentionally discrediting her. That's just, they're just writing because this is the way the world works. It's these men writing this story. And yeah, of course she'd go with the guy. Why wouldn't she go with the guy? This guy can hit people. Like, why wouldn't they be together? You know, it's not, it's so unthoughtful in that way. Like, it's just, duh, it has to happen. So we're just going to do it that way, instead of thinking like, what, does she? She's kind of perfect by herself. Like, all of these people ruined her life.
The film feels as self-congratulatory as the turtles are with themselves.
Yeah.
And like, okay, look at the way that these characters live, right? So we have April, who has her own apartment, who has like a shop that she runs, who has a job and everything. And then we have Casey Jones that is listening to a police scanner on a fucking rooftop. And then we have the Turtles that live in the sewer in the grossest fucking bachelor pad I've ever seen. And like, also, when you look at the Turtles themselves and the children that are preyed upon by the Foot Clan, they're basically the same, because like the way that they react to authority figures, like they only think about themselves and their own needs and not really about what they're doing or why they're there or anything. Like it feels like, and especially with like the Danny character, right? Like Danny didn't think about any of that stuff, why he was there or anything. Just, and the Turtles weren't truly either. They were just like, bad guy, I guess. Okay. But like they tried to make this like a kind of coming of age redemption story where it's like, it's just Dan now. And he doesn't apologize. He doesn't apologize. He just is like, oh, here's the $20. Trust me. And it's like, okay, you don't say sorry. You never fucking say sorry in this movie. Like, fuck you.
Well, the only thing, because it's not an apology, but the only thing that he like recoups for or has any sort of apologetic attitude towards is capital. It's because of the $20. Yes. It's literally nothing else. On top of that, I know that we haven't talked about this on the pod. We talked about it via text. But do you think when they wrote Toy Story, this was also a pull of ideology? This kid looks like Sid in Toy Story, and his t-shirt the entire time literally just says Sid. Like, the character's name's on the back, and that's not his name. That's not his name. Sid is not a character in this movie. It's just this guy, lanky, with that cut. He looks like Sid from Toy Story, and his shirt in this movie says Sid. It just, I mean, going back to A Christmas Toy and the whole conversation of like, oh, Toy Story is 100% a rip. You know, like they completely lifted. I mean, again, different thing, and we could talk about that on another thing. But because it was top of mind for me when I watched it, it was very just like, oh, that's probably where they got that character. He's like pseudopunk, mischievous, and theft-ridden, like he's
bad family, supposedly, that, you know, like all of those other like just really shitty tropes that are like, okay, yeah, I get it. Also, speaking of shitty, can we talk about how the Turtles, like, you know, their way is the only way, and also why they're such fucking assholes to that pizza guy? Okay, why they're like, well, oh, he's like a second late. He's not getting all the money now, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you fucking suck, Karen Turtle.
Yeah.
Like,
well, to me, that's the thing is what's so silly about this is that they're supposed to be these pillars of justice and with such a clear defined understanding of right and wrong, but they're simultaneously teenagers who have not experienced a lot. Not, I mean, obviously not to be ageist or to discredit young people, but there is a level of like experience that comes along with I'm getting into this whole thing, but you see the adolescent behavior of something like that, where it's like they think they're being funny, but in reality, they're just being fucking assholes. Like, to them, it's fun and funny, and they're just like being silly, but it's like, hey, this guy is trying to work a job. Like, you're being a dick. Fuck off. But at the same time, they're the overseer and these sort of end all be all pillars of justice for the city of New York. You know what I mean? It just, but that's the IP. That's the whole concept, where it's like the teen aspect is supposed to appeal to children, where it's like, yeah, I'm a teen, I'm a preteen, fuck it, I'm cool. Let me get my skateboard and eat pizza. I'm a turtle, roar, right? But on top of that, they're also supposed to be crime fighting heroes. So it's the dichotomy of those two things. Doesn't make sense. They don't exist together, shouldn't exist together realistically. But again, that's trying to explain the concept of realism in a movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where the turtles
absolutely
are like real and human sized, and they are ninjas also. Like, again, what, like, to what degree is it just like silly story, poorly written? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, because not to say that like the choices aren't bad, because the choices are bad, but
no, 100%. I think that, like, so yes, this is bad. Yes, this is dumb. Yes, whatever. But like, I also think that especially because this is for children, you know, like, and so like in the same way that we got that like really shitty patronizing view of girl power, right? Where we just feel excited to be included because there's a woman in this movie. at the same, like, and I know I go back to it a lot, but like the Ghostbusters type character that Bill Murray was, right? Like, like that portrait of masculinity, and this is what this is. So like what we're doing with this, and the reason I am just as critical of media for young people is because like what this is doing is working to normalize this kind of behavior. And I hate that, you know, and I think that, yes, this is dumb. Yes, this is silly. Yes, it's kind of fun. Yes, it's like there's a lot of moments like the gay joke that happened, right? Where, that was fucking bad.
So,
but like, go ahead.
No, I loved it. And here's why. It's so emblematic of straight fear of queerness, just in the sense that like he says, oh, you're claustrophobic, and he's like, do you want a fist in the mouth? I've never even looked at another guy before. He's so far removed from the concept of being attracted to men that he's literally never seen a man. Like he's never even looked at a guy. Like whenever he sees a guy, he averts his gaze because I'm not gay. Like I can't even look at you. I'm not gay. You want to know how not gay I am? Look, I can't even look at like so. To me, I've never even looked at a guy before is just so funny to me. Like, that is just the silliest fucking reaction, which also low key, I'm like, oh, if that's his reaction, doth protest a lot here.
Yes.
If you're like so homophobic that it's like, you can't even, you've thought about this. That means you've thought about guys sexually, queen. What's up? Hey. No, I mean, not to say that Casey Jones is cute, because Casey Jones sucks, but I just thought it was very funny. Anyways.
Yeah, that's why I'm critical of this kind of stuff, is just because it's like, this is what's working to normalize and reinforce behaviors and attitudes and gender norms and whatever the fuck else that they're going to put in here, right? And so, like, luckily now more people are going to therapy, you know, instead of just like, you know, punching their feelings out, or at least like the idea of therapy is becoming normalized, right? And so it's just watching this, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense why I was treated the way that I was by my peers, by men my age, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And the woman is like always there just to be like, you know, she's there in the fucking room and they're like, ah, man, what a babe. Ah, yeah, I'm going to take her out, you know? Like,
yeah.
Especially being, I know I've mentioned it, but like just the only woman in the room, you know, like, oh yeah, she's in a video. Ah, yeah, man, fucking cool. Like I'm going to do, and it's really gross and it's really patronizing. And like when their heroes do this, that's exactly why this kind of behavior exists and why it still exists today as they grow up. And then they teach that to their children because they're, you know, like, oh man, this is so cool. You gotta watch this Ninja Turtle shit, you know? Like, yeah, it's all cyclical and it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and those kind of, for as much as I'm like, I love that joke. That's so funny. I mean, it is that kind of humor where I was like, oh, no wonder I hated myself for so long. Like, of course, that makes perfect sense. Cause like anytime you're visible in any capacity, it's acceptable to be bad and negative towards that person. Right. It's acceptable because it's never really addressed. And the badness, it's either just overlooked or sort of yes-anded, the bad thing. But,
and yeah, like, I think that these just existed, like, in the way that they did because of two reasons. Because one, like, you know, reinforcing the binaries of this is what a man is, this is what a woman is, this is how things are, the way that things are with, like, no room for other ideologies, you know, like, of course, you could still like pizza and stuff. Like, their way of, like, adding nuance is they love pizza, right? Yeah. And that, like, feeds into the writing is just bad. And they didn't take their responsibility to children as seriously as perhaps they should have.
No, but what they did do you know what they did do?
What did they do? They
created a sick-ass arcade skate park. I want to
I do want to go there. Yeah. You know what I forgot too is I watched the San Diego Comic-Con at home this year. I watched like a bunch of panels and stuff. And one of them was the dudes that made this movie, that got it made and wrote it and the whole thing. Uh-huh. And they are trash.
Are they? I mean, that makes sense.
They super are. Like, they were the moderator. I felt so bad. He didn't even get to like really talk because it was just kind of like, oh, well, tell us about this. And then they like, because they're old white men, they just like fucking talked for 45 minutes and it was like a 50-minute panel. So I love it. they're talking about how in the US it was like, there was a writer's strike going on, but I was in the UK. So, and I was like, you fucking scab.
Yeah,
like,
it just,
I was so like pissed watching it because, it's, I mean, it's
that
a fun
tracks.
watch.
That tracks for as just whatever this movie is. That tracks.
And those dudes have like, their video was like in their house and it just like, they were wearing the Turtles jacket and they had all the turtle stuff around them. Like they were still so fucking self-congratulatory about them making this movie and about it being a success that they were still surrounding themselves with this memorabilia. It was very gross and disturbing.
Straight male presenting people love Ninja Turtles. It's true.
Really
it's
do.
just like, it really is just like this resonant piece of iconography for these people. It really is just so emblematic of like, yeah, I'm interesting. I like violence and I like pizza. Sue me. And you're like, cool.
And no
cool,
anchovies,
cool.
okay?
Yeah.
No anchovies.
Because I'm not eating vegetables, Mom. Yeah, so it's a whole thing.
Oh, man. In 2010's New York, reporter April O'Neil is tired of covering condescending news and puts herself in literal physical danger by following the crime syndicate known as the Foot Clan to get a story that will potentially be the big break she's been waiting for. She winds up being taken hostage by the group and subsequently saved by big mysterious turtle vigilantes. After putting the pieces together and realizing these Ninja Turtles were the result of an experiment her father was involved with, she brings the story to her boss, who decides to fire her immediately. Heartbroken, she finds herself seeking advice from her father's old, obscenely rich friend, and learns that her research was supposed to be a super cure for some unknown disease. Weird.
She leaves and heads to the turtle hideout and finds herself being comforted by the turtle gang, who hail her as their guardian after reminding her she saved them from the fire that destroyed her father and the rest of his research. But, here comes the Foot Clan to destroy them. Turns out Daddy's friend was a baddie and betrayed her. There's a big old fight and another big old fight and a chemical weapon and then another big old fight, but teamwork eventually saves the day and everyone is okay. Righteous brothers.
That's the movie.
And that's the movie. I do want to jump in here like I did before and just say unequivocally, canonically, and for the record, Tony Shalhoub is hot. His voice is in this. I don't ever see him, but his voice is hot. So Tony Shalhoub, if you're listening, yeah, whatever. I'm on Instagram. Just hit me up or whatever. Cool. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about this movie.
Speaking of hot, can we talk about how all of the men talk about April, even while she's in the room?
Yeah.
And how gross it is. Like, even like the turtles say, she's so hot, I can feel my shell tightening.
So that
Maybe
was
she has hot friends.
So these are some of the things that like I'm going to come out and make a big statement about this movie and how I feel about it. I didn't like it. And I didn't like it because of a lot of reasons. That being one of them. Because for me, yes, they're adolescent, but like, cool, make the teenagers, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they're gonna be crushing. That's the whole thing. Sure. My shell tightening, y'all. What? Why? Okay, so you have a boner in, like, the implication being you have an erection. Oh, so fun and funny. Like, great. It's so cool. I'm so excited about your turtle erection. That's sick. And then like, does she have hot friends? And then Will Arnett the whole time too is like
referring to her as Candy. You look good and nice. Look at you. You're like Candy. Wait,
yeah, like it's they're bad. I do also want to just caveat that this movie is entirely expositive backstory. There's nothing else happens. This entire movie exists just to explain in some silly Michael Bay realistic way how the Turtles can exist in some relatively grounded, realistic, scientific explanation, which is so unnecessary. It's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You don't got to do shit. Like, you don't have to explain that. That's the whole point, is it's silly. Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, don't be messy and gross with some of this dialogue, but like, the whole structure of the movie is to be like, how can we make... It's like Battleship the movie. It's like, that's a fucking board game. It's like Transformers. How can we make this like real life? Y'all, it's Transformers. I mean, granted, Michael Bay'd it. So... obviously, that's going to happen. I know he's just a producer, but even still, I'm like, that lighting, he made sure to get every primary color as both the backlight and the fill light in any given scene, which is just like, yeah, let's put green here and purple here, even though there's literally no reason for it. Again, it's just cartoonist stuff. But I didn't like, I mean, the Turtles were just bad. I hated that they kept like being horny. And then Will Arnett kept being horny. And then who else was horny? I feel like there was somebody else who was horny.
Everybody in this movie was horny. And Megan Fox, April, was just having none of it. And that's why I liked it.
Okay.
So everything that you said is 100% valid. And I hear you.
But however, to me, that's the thing, though, is I'm like... Oh, sorry. You go.
It's okay. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say... Part of it, too, there's like a history of just her very vocal general mistreatment of like the way she was mistreated by Michael Bay. So in this very Michael Bay movie, it's like, to me, it does feel a little fake girl powery in the same way that the first one was. Because even though, sure, she's very like, yeah, fuck that, whatever. I feel like none of the characters who are that way to her get any consequence apart from like, you're a hero now. It's like, it's sort of like your bad behavior is rewarded in the same way that the other movie did.
I disagree in the sense that I don't feel like it was their bad behavior was rewarded. I feel like they looked worse for their behavior. And maybe this is just my read as a woman. So like, one of the things that I fucking loved is that this movie is not about the Ninja Turtles. This is about April O'Neil and, like, you know, sure, her daddy and everything, but this is about April. It starts with her the whole fucking time. It's her, right? And it's her wanting to break out of the mold that was cast for her, right? So she's a hot girl. She's trying to, like, you know, be taken seriously and all of that. And, you know, like, sure, Will Arnett is there, like, you know, his character basically exists. So we remember that she's hot, right? And every time that he goes after her or every time that he says something, we're all like, you're stupid. Like, I have a note here that says, put that fedora in the trash, because like that, like, everything that he does looks bad. It looks desperate. It's not meant to be like, oh yeah, he's totally gonna get her, right? And like, even the same way with the Turtles, like, they'll say this stuff, but I don't feel like any of it's rewarded. And she doesn't end up with anybody in the end. And super, super important, because this never fucking happens. She's a woman that has no powers, that has no, like, her only power is that she's super smart and she's like willing to like do whatever she has to do to get the job done, right? But she has the final punch on Shredder. She's like, this person that like tore apart her family and her whole life. It could have very easily been like one of the Turtles where they're like chaining themselves to like boom, 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 the whole thing. And she's a part of that, you know? And so that final punch is what gets the bad guy gone and everything. And she's, in this story, narratively, allowed to have that. And so that worked so much better for me, rather than the Turtles defending her honor and doing this or whatever. Like, it's like they set all of this up so she can exact her revenge. So she can be the person to take control and to decide what happens, you know? And she's gonna punch him in the fucking face, you know? And I was here for that, because we don't get to see Pepper Potts, or that's her name, right? We don't get to see her do that until she has the fucking Iron Man costume, like that. Oh, look, ha ha ha, right? We don't get to see like the girlfriend or the girl in the movie ever get to do that. And like, in a lot of ways, like, April O'Neil it was shown that she is capable, she's smart, she's driven, and at every turn you could tell that she was a victim of nobody believing her or of like patriarchal expectation because of the way that she looks. And so she was determined to break that, and she did. It sucks that she had to like go out and put herself in physical fucking mortal danger in order to like get this lead or whatever, but that's like the only way for her to get through, because like even all of the women, all like there was like 2 other women. It was Whoopi Goldberg and like her roommate or whatever, but like those women and everybody around her was just treating her like a piece of ass, right? And they were saying things like to discredit and to question her. They were putting her down. They would say stuff like that asshole that works with her, right? Where he's just like, what were you doing in Brooklyn? A trampoline convention? Oh, you think you found Superman? You have no evidence, blah, blah, blah. But like, it's just such a great portrait of what women have to go through to be believed and to be taken seriously and to be like, to get anywhere. And also like, she was the person that saved the turtle. And instead of just being like, oh yeah, like, you know, just saying that and having that be a thing, like, they actually like the Turtles and Master Splinter sat her down and said like, you are the great guardian. You saved us. We are here because of you. And they have this really nice moment where they're just like acknowledging that she is the reason that they're allowed to be. So yeah. So for all of these reasons, I really, really liked this movie. And I was just so focused on her the whole time that like, because I felt was just such a strong character, and like that everybody else around her was not taken seriously, or was there Will Arnett just to show like, just to be a reminder like, oh, she's hot. He was the patriarchal character that was like reminding you this is the kind of world that she lives in, and this is why she's never taken seriously. And this is also what she's fighting against every single day, you know? But again, in the end, she was the one that got the punch. I don't know. I just loved her fucking character in this, and I never thought that I would say that. Ever. I avoided this movie like the plague.
We have completely different reads on this. I think she was so poorly written. I think the way that they wrote her character discredited what the movie was trying to say about her not needing anybody. Like, granted, yes, she did not get with anybody. I love that. That was great. I did enjoy that. But there's levels of like the story where she like, okay, so when she loses her job, there's like this whole thing where she's like trying to be like Turtle, whatever. She's trying to like say like, this is what I've seen and this is what's happening. On her phone is a picture, photographic evidence of
yes,
them.
I hated that. And
then she gets fired and doesn't even bring it up. I'm like, so this writing is trying to make her look foolish. Like the story, the script, this story is trying to make her look incompetent. So as far as autonomous as she is, and for these, because you're right, Will Arnett is the character surrogate for the patriarchy. He is only there to sexualize her. That's his job. Like he's supposed to be that like, I'm your best friend and I've loved you the whole time trope, right? Like that's his deal. On top of that, the Turtles, from what I remember, and I did watch this today, they comment on her physical appearance almost every scene. Like, I don't think there's ever a moment where they're not, even when the truck is careening down this snowy hill and they're literally sliding underneath. Oh, that was fucking
gross. Yeah.
They're still in this moment of danger where she like might die, for as much as they're like, you saved us, you're glorious, we appreciate you. They obviously don't appreciate it that much because they're still talking about wanting to fuck her when she's about to die. So I'm like, you know,
were
like,
they talking about that then? Because I know like the whole reason that like I watched this a couple days ago, but like the whole reason that like the truck starts to go even crazier and stuff is because Will Arnett looks at her ass, which fucking I screamed at the television set when that happened. But I mean, that's very on brand for his character. And like, I do have notes about those pictures and stuff. And I'm like, why didn't she tell her boss that she was at the holdup? Why not? Yeah. But then like, also like, I think that was just those moments were bad writing. I don't think that they were smart enough to try to write her bad like that. I think they just fucking forgot is what I think.
No, but that's the thing is I think that this movie is masquerading as that, but I think it like, because also as a backstory This movie is so silly. Project Renaissance, that's why their names are those names. Yeah. Like, excuse me, the reason they love pizza is because she fed them pizza in the tank and they're like, yum yum, only food for us forever.
That was like, silly. Yes.
What is happening? And then, like, I get it. I totally get why they're trying to do this, just in the vein of like Michael Bay. But I feel like at every turn, because I believe that Megan Fox could absolutely pull off this character, but I do think that the writing and the story itself did her a disservice. And that's it. It really is for as like sort of generally exalting as this character is supposedly is throughout the film, as it surface level states in all of these moments where, like, again, like, you're the reason we're allowed to exist. You saved us. You are this hero who I've told these turtles about. And they're like, that's her? And he's like, yeah, that's who this is. And they're like, oh, no shit. Like, whatever. Even after that, the turtles are talking about wanting to fuck her.
Yes.
And I'm
all
like,
of that is gross. And that is very on brand for the world that we live in. Do I like it? No. And maybe my bar is just very fucking low because I was just so excited that she got these moments that we never see women, especially in superhero movies, get. And live, for sure, right? Because, you know. But, like, I think everything that you're saying is valid. I think so. Did she need to be sexualized at every turn? Fuck no, she didn't. And that's one of the things that kept me away from this movie for so long, is because I fucking hate it when that happens. I hate when, like, Megan Fox as a character, you know, like, is generally just over sexualized and over that. And maybe, like, I am desensitized to that, right? And maybe, like, I'm just so happy that, like, that she got agency in her story and that she was allowed these moments, that, like, my opinion might be different on a second watch, but, like, truly, like, I do stand by what I said. Like, I was able to put myself in her position, like, or in this character, and be like, cool, like, absolutely, this is what happens when you try to tell people what happened and they don't believe you. Absolutely, this is what happens when a dude won't take no as an answer. Absolutely, this happens. Like, and that also goes back to what I was saying, when you're the only woman in, like, a room filled with men that, you know, like, and you guys are kind of friends and everything, especially as, like, a young person, and it sucks and it's gross and I hate it, but, like, that's exactly what happens. And I feel like that compared to the last April O'Neil and compared to, like, the last movie and everything, I felt like she had so much more agency in this story. But it was still, like, she was ultimately friendless even throughout all of this, because being a successful woman is lonely, you know, and because going after what you want is lonely, because nobody understands. Everybody's trying to tell you, like, oh, well, you know, I mean, just be grateful for what you got. I mean, like, you know, you got to do, like, and there's this exchange that she has with Will Arnett where he's, like, telling her, like, why are you going and putting yourself in danger, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, just put it to bed. Just do, you got your thing. You'll get your, and she's like, would anybody else, would any of those other great reporters do that? Like, and he's like, no, it's different. And she's like, no, it's not. They started where I was and they had to take these opportunities. You're only saying that because I'm a woman. So, like, she did, like, she wouldn't, you know, because of course she's not going to see Will Arnett looking at her ass while she's outside trying to, like, you know, like, help her friends outside or whatever, right? But, like, whenever she was confronted with, you know, there were those moments when she was confronted with that sort of sexist behavior, and she called it out, and she's like, no, how dare you say this to me? Like, would you say this to another dude? Like, no, get out of here, you know? Yeah. Also, Will Arnett just hitting on her in general in this movie was gross because he's, like, 35 years older than her. I don't know, something inappropriate. But
yes, I agree. I just, truly, to me, this movie was written by three men. First and foremost, like, to me, this felt like some misogynist who put on the future is female t-shirt a little, only in the sense that if I feel like this story, if it was really intentionally trying to because obviously they skipped some of those tropes. Again, like she didn't get with the guy and she didn't die, but she stayed single and was a part of the ultimate. She was not damseled. She was a part of it, right? But even still, I feel like if they really did want to mean that at a point at which these characters are learning about their behavior, the movie should have made a stance. Like at that point when the turtles are like, hey, you saved us and you're cool, it should be a recognizing of like, fuck, we're gross. Like we did some gross shit. And then at that point, just like stop. And then what would have been cool is if like that was really the intention. Later when Will Arnett does something stupid, one of the turtles would have been like, hey, that sucks. Like, yes, super dope.
And again, maybe like I'm just happy that we got the end for once, and we didn't fall into these tropes, like because the bar is so fucking low. Yeah. But ultimately, what I'm saying, like the characters' reactions to her and the way that the constant sexualization of her, that was there, that sucked. They should have been like, oh no, like, you know, like, hey, don't do that. That's like, you know, that's inappropriate. But this movie was not about the turtles and their growth. It wasn't really about them at all, right? They were just side characters. This was really like April's movie, is what it felt like to me. And yes, of course, like, okay, so I'll go back to like my Michael Show reference with Parks and Rec, where they didn't change anything about Leslie Knope. They just, like for season 2 and the other seasons, they just changed how the characters reacted to her. And I feel like if the other characters in this film weren't so horny, you wouldn't feel as strongly about that, because, and you can't, like, none of those things were her fault. She can't help how she looks. She can't help all, and maybe like that's part of what I was going into it with too, is it's like, I know that she's hypersexualized and I know that that is Michael Bay's choice. And I know that, you know, like she's a lot more than this. So I tried to ignore that looking at this because, you know, she's an actor that just gets the short end of the stick with that a lot. And so
Hollywood has absolutely fucked her. Like just in every, like they've over-sexualized her to the point of oversaturation and then made everybody hate her because she was too hot. And then when she tried to like come back, people are still like, oh, she's gross. Look at her thumbs. Like it's a whole, people really ruined her in Hollywood. And it does suck. It's shitty. Right. But I really think this script added to that, like for as autonomous as she was, because like even the scene with her roommate when she's in the room, they made her look intentionally erratic, and like for what reason? Like she could give her some autonomy in the sense that like have her explain herself in a very clear way. In these moments when she's trying to explain herself, they make her look so foolish and like a klutz. Like, so what is the intention? So it's like,
true. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like at every point where it's like, yes, she is important. She is strong. Whereas I think in the first one, that version of, I mean, granted, taking out of context, that character is so much more autonomous and, in my opinion, just coherent and strong as a character, obviously apart from all the men in her life and that choice at the end for her to like kiss him, that like so out of character. It's so bullshit. It's fake. But in this one, just at any point where like there's a moment where she can enact some change, like with her boss who completely discredits her, thinks she shouldn't have the job, thinks she's insane, they make her that character at any moment of growth or at any moment of like power. They take it away from her at every point to the where that she has to go do it herself. And then even then in these moments where she's like, fine, I'm going to be the underdog and have to do it myself. Cause then that's the narrative pathway they give her, is the underdog because nobody believes her, whatever. Even then this group is constantly like sexualizing her and all of this stuff, when in fact we've already discussed that. We've already discussed Will Arnett's character being shitty. She's addressed it. We've addressed that she is a mother figure almost. Just like a savior figure to these turtles. They're still trying to fuck her. He's still trying to fuck her. I'm like, why? Like,
okay,
why?
So all of that exists because all of those things existed in the first one, right? Like it is inherent to the Ninja Turtle story that April O'Neil is oversexualized and that everybody wants to fuck her. It is inherent that she is good at her job and that she does get fucked because nobody believes her, or because, you know, X, Y, and Z, or because she's good at what she does, right? So this is in true Michael Bay fashion, right? The bigger, grittier, more intense thing. And
Yeah.
so how do you make that more intense in a room full of 3 men? You make them just constantly. And how do you disempower a woman? You simplify her down to her sexuality, right? And to her body and to what she is. So yes, like absolutely those scenes 100% worked to try to just make it like, oh, how cute she's there, or like, oh, dang girl, she can do this, like in all of those ways. But taking out those characters and how they responded to her, I still stand by. I think that she is a great character, and I think this film could have really benefited from a woman writer being in the room. Not that they would allow one, but you're also right in the sense that this was a bunch of guys trying to be like, we made this positive female character. We're not going to make any others in this movie. And we're also just going to talk about how hot she is so the guys aren't bored, right? Or they don't feel threatened. So like, that's what because she did feel powerful. She did feel all of this, but in sexualizing her, they just made it less threatening for men to see her and to let her have that last punch and to let her exist and to have so much of the story be about her, because you can't have more than one woman on a screen in a dude story, right?
But that's the thing. I feel like that's giving it way too much credit. Because truly, to me, it felt fake. It felt so phony. It felt so phony feminist. To me, that was just the read of it. And also, I think there's a level of like, this movie also just kind of felt like structurally, it felt like the pre-ride narrative of a ride at an amusement park. Like, structurally, it's like they're setting up this story, and then the ride is the big action, and then there's like the return to station outro narrative. I didn't enjoy this movie because it did feel fraudulent in these ways. I feel like, again, in the same way that Michael Bay has done previously, it felt like phony autonomy. It felt like phony power. To me, it felt disingenuous. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, because you're correct, like, having all of these, even after these facts, like, that's just kind of how life is. But I think life is perpetuated because of stories like this. So, because media is so important in a movie that is supposedly this thing, why not change the reality of life to some degree? Obviously, not just be like, well, this is whatever. Like, you're just perpetuating that in a way that like young kids are going to see this again and be like, oh, well, we can still do that. Like, that's fine for us, and we can go out into the world and do it. Like, if this movie was intentionally trying to be this feminist storytelling, I think they would have done that. They would have acknowledged these things. They would have given the turtles the tools in these moments to autonomously and organically say, hey, that's fucked up, or that's wrong, let's stop doing this. They would have given Will Arnett's character the tools to say that or do that thing. But they kind of just let them exist in that way. And in that way, it's like they swept the platform from underneath Megan Fox's character. Where it's like, yes, obviously she is these things. We're seeing that. That's awesome. Fuck yeah. Super on board. But by then not acknowledging these other characters and letting the men just be shitty constantly around her, it's taking the power away from what they consider to be a powerful feminine story.
I want to clarify. I don't think this is a feminist story in any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
So I enjoy a lot of the things about her character and a lot of the beats that she was given, right? Or allowed to inhabit. But that, did this need to be better in the way that it treated her? Yes. And I think that is very meta as to how this story itself is very meta when you look at April O'Neil as Megan Fox. And that's, I think, coming into this being like, they have fucked you up, girl. They have chewed you up and spit you out. They have tried to do all of this stuff. Fuck them. And she's still trying to do well and do all of that. And when you're under that kind of stress, okay, yes, she's smart and everything, but have you blown a job interview? Have you totally when somebody asks you, if somebody comes up and asks me about my media analysis or whatever, or a paper I wrote, my paper could be fucking amazing and super well written and I got an A on it and all this stuff. But if you try to ask me about it while I'm drinking or while I'm have been up all night trying to piece all of this shit together, of course I'm going to stumble over it. Of course all of this. And when you know that the people in the room are not there for you, you know that they're not going to listen to what you say. So you try to fumble and get over all of that stuff. So would it have been better if she was able to articulate that a little bit better to people in power? Yes, 100%. However, allowing for nuance and showing that sometimes even though you're capable, you do fumble. Cool, I'm fucking here for it. Is this giving them way too much credit? Yes, but I'm looking at all of my notes were Megan Fox, not April O'Neil. And I just,
You're being so incredibly kind to the writers of this film. You're so
No,
kind.
I'm being kind to Megan Fox.
But that's the thing, though, is because if we're looking at Megan Fox and her performance, that's different from the narrative. Because we can address what she's been given and what she can do with the material. But if the material itself, that whole bullshit. To me, I think you're being very kind to the writers because I don't think, because you said there's room for nuance in these characters. But if we look at this whole backstory, I'm it's the most unnuanced.
Okay,
it's
but
so,
you can.
Again, it's different reads.
You can look at any movie that we critique, and it could be we're being way too kind to the writers, because I'm absolutely sure that Indiana Jones was not trying to have this conversation about this and this and this and this, right? But but that's also part of part of it is when you're an artist and when you do something, as soon as it's out there and in the world, regardless of how you meant it to be consumed or how you meant it to be interpreted, you cannot control how people perceive it or what people read into that. And so this is just my read and my interpretation. Do I think that they meant any of these things? No. And I think that that's where Megan, as a woman portraying this character, knowing what she was doing, I think that's where this kind of shined a little bit. And is that being too nice to some of them? Yeah, sure. But I also think that despite bad writing, that, sometimes actors can do a really phenomenal job with shit that they were given,
It's true. Yeah.
That's why I think in those moments where she is flabbergasted, and again, I know that I'm gonna be keep saying this, but
no, I love it.
She got that final punch. She got her fucking revenge. She did all of that, and she was acknowledged for what she's done and what she did, and she was allowed to be a part of the solution rather than just being damseled. So. Yeah. I fucking stand all of that. Did they realize they were doing that? No. And if they did, would they have, done that? Fuck no, they wouldn't have. Because I have no faith in the writers of this movie. But I have faith in Megan Fox and April O'Neil. Because April, just in herself, like you were saying, in the last movie and stuff, she's strong, she's capable, she's all this other stuff. So, her as a character, great. How all of the men and everybody around her react, fucking garbage in all of these movies, Yeah. Yeah. She exists there to confuse little boys and be like, oh, mommy, my shell's getting tight. Whatever. So.
Ooh, I love, is this the first time we've been on opposite ends of something and stuck with it?
It's one of the few times for sure.
One of the few times. Okay. Yeah. Because I love it. I love when we disagree on something and we're just both no, but you, and just no, but you, no, but are you hearing that? I am hearing you, but really, are you hearing this?
But really.
But really, did you what? But obviously difference of opinion, obviously different takes. And obviously it's based on life experience as well. Because I don't know the female experience at all. Right? I've never been there, never will be there. That is not a part of my experience as a person. But the male experience is something that I've experienced, and these men are fake.
They're trash. Yeah, again, these men are trash and one-sided and terrible and horrible. Yeah. All of them.
It's such a, also I do want to say something that I thought was so funny. I was watching it and Eric came down and I had it paused and we were talking about something. I was like, this movie is all over the place. It's also very silly. And I was like, watch. I'm so excited for there to be the scene where it's just like news reporters or something. And they're just what are they reporting there? I don't know. It's some kind of turtle. They're what do you mean? Yeah. And they're fighting. It's they're ninjas almost. Yeah. Well, Do you have more of a description? I don't know. Maybe they're like 30.
Yes.
No, I honestly think they're a little bit younger, probably teens. Are you telling me that these teenage Ninja Turtles, well, they're also reporting that they're mutants. So let me get this straight. These Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are running amok? And like that, I was like, oh, here comes that scene. The titular, we know it's coming. And then she wakes up and it's like, what are you? Well, we're turtles. Actually, we're ninjas. We're also teens. We're mutants, as some people say. And then she's like, so wait, you're mutant ninja turtle teens? And they're like, that sounds weird when you say it like that. I'm just like, oh my God, this is so bad. Like,
they were so proud.
Crazy. It was, and honestly, just from a self-congratulatory perspective, I was full of joy just knowing like, I mean, obviously it's coming. When's it going to come in what form? I'm very curious. But as soon as it happened, I was just like, ooh. Oh God, I'm so smart. I mean,
you know what kind of vibe I got watching this? Like, because like, yeah, there were moments like that, and it was just like, fucking yeah, of course. And like, you know, like in like their portrayal of like men and women and like all this other stuff, like kind of like Fast 5 or Fast 4, right? Like, that's the vibes that I got from this, like those. So yes, like that's also kind of why I was so on board, because like, okay, this is dumb action movie, this is this, and then it's like, whenever they break, you know, some of these tropes, like, and give it to the ladies, I'm like, yes, thank you, thank you. Everybody else is trash, and yes, of course, you're gonna be like, yeah, baby, and stuff like that, which is gross, and I hate it. Let's change that the next time, because you know there's gonna be a next time that they fucking reboot this fucking franchise. Like, okay, I kept getting like both of these, like, it was so hard to write the intros. I kept getting them like mixed up because like I've heard the story or like read the story or seen the story of the Ninja Turtles like 84 times. So it's just like, okay, wait, it's like the same formula. It's the same thing, just different. And it's boring. Let's do something different with this.
Yeah, it's incredibly boring. They just, I don't know. It was an amusement park ride for me. It's just wild. Well, I don't really even know how I feel about her. So, you know what
Are we talking about the other woman?
Yes.
Who was there literally just to be shit on?
Yes.
Like, her character was like, you did this bad. Oh.
Yeah.
She was just there so that way Shredder would be able to beat up on somebody.
Yeah, 100%. And also, let's be real. That hair streak, that is so outplayed. You need to stop it with these like
this
cool,
is not
like,
Scott Pilgrim versus the Universe.
Yes,
okay,
straight up, like the cool Asian girl gets a streak in her hair. Like, can you stop? Like, why? What's the need?
Speaking of tropes, that's like such a bad trope. Is just like the femme fatale spy version of like that's like one of the only roles that like women are allowed to inhabit, like Asian women are allowed to inhabit in like these kinds of movies. And yeah, it's really disheartening.
It is, because it really like she was allowed to be bad, but then in the badness she was like, not only is she portrayed to our audience as like, oh, she sucks because she's evil, based in this like binary of good versus evil, but within that evil sector, she's also abused. So it's like, cool, this person can't get a fucking break. like you're writing her to just be the punching bag, but with a evil cape. Like, it's just, I hated the treatment of her. I hated her character in the movie.
She didn't need to be there. There was no development. There was nothing. Like, and so the other woman that we're gonna have in this movie is just going to be a punching bag for the bad guy. Yeah. And we already have women putting other women down, and so now, okay, great, we get to watch women be abused. Okay, great. And so that's why I say, like, this movie was absolutely not a feminist movie. It's an absolute fluke that I really like the character of April. You know, maybe I'm thinking about her like way too meta, you know, because this movie didn't give a shit about its women. It didn't give a shit about, like, it was just, you are supposed to be there for eye candy and all this other stuff. But I can't help it, you know? But yeah, the treatment of her was just really sad. She didn't need to be there, and it just made me. It was bad.
Also, I do want to get into a couple like really fun bad movie things, like her trying to take a picture with her camera and it's like low light. She's like, "Shit,
Yes.
I gotta climb." Like these really clunky segues or these really clunky story beats. Like the story beats were so unnuanced. It was like as soon as something's supposed to happen, it's like somebody smashes a symbol and you're like, what's happening? And it's like, oh, that's right. They have to progress to this next scene. Like it was so, it was so weird. Anyway, I
thought it was funner than the first one in those respects. Like I was laughing and I was like, okay, this is so bad. This is really bad. Okay, whatever. Like, so it was in that way for me, it worked like it was like more cartoonish.
It was way more cartoonish. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Whereas the first one was like Barney meets Law and Order. And you're
I
like,
mean, but that's like
okay.
90s cartoons, right? Have you ever gone back and tried to watch some of those? Because those like, yeah, at least like the ones that were on like Fox and WB and all that. Like, some of them are hard to watch.
They're like really trying to be the serious. They were trying to do Christopher Nolan before Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Which is what it felt like. And I know I haven't seen the other ones from the 90s because like there's 3 of them.
Yes.
Two of them
3.
for sure. There's 3. I know the second one, the tone is completely different.
Yes.
From what people have said. Have you seen it?
This is the 90s ones, but yeah.
Yes.
I've seen them, but I don't remember anything. And you either stan the second one or stan the third one, but whichever one you stan, you hate the other one, as it was told to me.
Oh, is it? Thank you for letting me know the rules of the subculture. I will...
I just found out myself. A man had to explain it to me.
We love it. We love it. I mean, I haven't seen the other ones, but just basing it on these two. Basing it on the first 1991 and then this 2014 one. The 2014 one was visually it was way more grabby. Like, I was captivated. I mean, there was so much to look at. The colors were way too vibrant. The action sequences were just
which also works to it being a cartoon
all over the place. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So those levels were just like, this is fun, silly action, which is all it was. You know.
Yeah, this was a Fast and Furious movie for kids.
Yeah.
That's just way too horny.
Okay, so we're in the outro, and before we just go into this, I'm going to do something I never do, which is I'm going to jump right in here, right off the top, and say that canonically, Bebop and Rocksteady, I know nothing about them. I will say they are boyfriends. They are married. They may or may not be adopting. Who knows? However, I don't want to perpetuate gays in a negative light knowing that they are villains because I know nothing about them. So please do not yell at me. JK, I love being yelled at. My handle's Zila Fibri everywhere. Send me words of aggression. However, I don't want to perpetuate like gays being bad, but like the idea that they're boyfriends, obsessed. I don't know them. And again, I know nothing about Ninja Turtles, but just seeing them, I'm like, oh, duh. These are these like gym bro boyfriends who are just like super mask and silly. They're boyfriends.
That's it.
They are. They have to be. They must. If Bebop and Rocksteady are not boyfriends, sorry, TMNT's canceled. My bad. Like, fine, I'll just say it. I'll be brave. I'll be brave and say it. If they are not boyfriends canonically, I don't care about the Ninja Turtles. I don't care.
That tracks.
Yeah.
From everything we've seen today.
Yeah.
And talked about today.
They must.
100%.
They must be boyfriends.
I had like no notes for them in the last one. The turtles themselves. Because it's
same.
just like they're so boring and one-sided, and it's like everything is either a boner or fart joke.
Yeah. Which was the two big comedic beats of that second movie. Yeah. Okay.
Eric. The
What's
1990s
yes.
TMNT movie.
Yes.
Who is it for?
Horny teenagers.
Is that going to be your answer for both? Because that was going to be my answer.
I kind of, yeah. Horny teenage boys is who it was for. Because, I mean, again, who's being belittled? It's like these boys are being mistreated. And then they're like, surrogate is like, yeah, these other teenagers who are also boys who also like pizza. And then they're also like, smokes or clothes. Or like,
girl.
Skate park arcade. And that girl's hot. My wiener. And you're like, okay, wow, let's just chill out, children.
Yeah.
Like, so
also,
yes.
Daddy loves me. Yeah.
Daddy loves me, but he hates me. But he does it. I'm a man now. Take off the girly Y. And you're like, okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Too much.
I'm going to say,
Same.
yes, 100%.
Yeah, right?
That is canonical for the first and second movie.
Yes.
Did you like this first one?
Not really. Like, there are elements that I was like, this is fine, but overall, kind of boring.
Did you hesitate because you're afraid to like lose cred or like that somebody's going to come beat you up over it?
No, because I was earnestly trying to think, because I also know now from you, thank you for the knowledge, that would only be credible for the second or third of the 90s franchise. Whereas the first one's the one that people are kind of like, whatever.
Oh, no, the first one everybody loves.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, so everybody loves the first one, and then a second and third. Sorry, there's going to be they're going to come to your door, they're going to beat it down. I'm sorry.
Boycott me.
Canceled.
Fuck Jeff Bezos.
Eric.
Just boycott me, y'all. No, truly, honestly, earnestly, I thought it was kind of boring. I thought there was not a lot of substance. It was kind of fun. But overall, did I find myself wandering and like kind of tired of the story? Absolutely.
I also agree with that because I was like on my phone and was like, oh shit, what happened? And then I had to like go back, and I never watch my phone. I never look at my phone during these because I'm like trying to like pay attention and be like, okay, cool, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like it was so boring that I had to stop the movie and go to bed. And then I watched it the next day.
Okay. Do you want to know something funny? I watched the first 15 minutes in one day, and I was like, you know what? I can't do this today. I'm going to prepare myself, come back. I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'm going to have a nice cup of coffee, and I'm just going to get into it. And it's going to be great.
That's fair. That's very good.
Yeah, so boring.
So we
generally.
had the same... We had the same reaction. Okay, cool. Yeah. No, I wanted to like it because,
Same.
Because like, so many people are nostalgic for this. There's so much love for this. There's like, like a whole fucking empire built off of the Turtles. And yeah, it was just kind of boring. And like, I don't understand sometimes how people can go back or how people can stand these things and not watch them. Or they can like go back and watch them and be like, yeah, that was fucking great.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait. Did we watch the same movie?
It's nostalgia.
Hold
on.
All
nostalgia. Well, that's the thing. It's literally Barney Law and Order, and we love cinematic. We love cinematic dichotomous aesthetic. We love it. And so to me, I'm like, yeah, give me Barney Law and Order. This is going to be fucking cute. Like, everything looks gritty, but they look cartoonish and fun and silly in this really yellow, dimly lit world. Like, this is cool. But boring as fuck. Story was boring. Sorry. I'm going to be brave here. Sorry, guys.
Dang.
It was boring. It was boring. As a movie, it's boring.
One of the things that I love so much about doing this pod is that I can say how I really feel about stuff because so many times it's like when somebody's like, oh, what do you think about that? Like, at least before doing this pod, like it was just kind of like, oh, well, but like now I'll straight up tell somebody to their face, I'm like, yeah, this is trash. Or like, I don't like this.
Because again, it's all opinion based, but generally it's kind of like, I read it this way and it's bad.
Yeah. And like, great, everybody has their own different interpretations and all of that. But like,
if it makes
like when
you happy,
when you go, just go back. If you stand something, just go back and watch it every couple years. Just go back and just do that. It's fine. It's okay to also like know this is trash and still like it. Like that's also cool. Like I love doing that. Are the Fast and the Furious movies trash? Yes. Do I love them? Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Alien Resurrection, is it trash? Yes. Do I love it? So
okay. I actually did like the Alien prequels after watching it all together.
Okay.
Mostly because it all like I was like, I fucking get it. Okay, cool. Were they dumb? Were they bad? Yes, 100%. Did they do things that they shouldn't have done? 100%. But you know what? Like it was just silly and fun. I also really loved Alien 3.
Okay. Alien 3 was kind of boring for me. This is an Alien podcast now. Alien 3 was a little boring for me. Prometheus, I loved. Even at first watch.
Okay, cool. Okay.
I love Prometheus. The sequel to that, I liked significantly less, but I thought it was just fine. But
I love this conversation about AI,
Yes.
and mother versus father versus
yes.
okay, let's do
Alien.
let's do Alien. I want to do Alien.
We'll finish this, but yeah. No, there's a whole thing. And also the erasure of the gay characters. I'm like, you need to get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a whole thing with that. I was so mad seeing that in theaters because Danny, I don't know if you want to edit this out or whatever. I'm going to just say it. We saw the trailers to that and I was like, yes, these husbands are in it and they're like astronauts together and these gay astronauts are going to space and it's cool. And then like the first people to get killed are them, like one of them, and then he's like stays behind and I'm just like, they had like 2 lines and they hardly kissed. I'm like, you need to show wiener now and you need to show loving husbands now. You need to show male affection.
Yes.
Again, the wiener's not as important, but you know what I mean.
Whenever there's a film that has female nudity and like there's obviously a dude that's naked, like they'll show like everything for the woman, right? So we all collectively as a household kind of just yell, show us your dick. Like you coward, like show it. You know, like, you're gonna show a woman like what they're both naked. It's fine, but there's always like the strategic covering, and I'm like, coward.
I'm like, show like all gender inclusive nudity. Like, come on. Anyways,
okay. The remake, was it new, interesting, or the same? Progressive, regressive? Has the story evolved with today's ideals?
I'm gonna say it was a
hot take.
I don't know if this is even a hot take. I think it was the same. I don't think it was intentionally progressive.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it was visually more interesting, but I don't know where that lies on our chart. And that's what I have to say about that. So what do you think?
I think it was pretty much the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I also agree that it was not intentionally progressive. If they knew, if they asked me my read of this before they went to go film it or anything, and I said any of the stuff that I said about Megan Fox's character, about April O'Neil, they would have gone back and changed it because they did not want strong female characters and stuff. Has it evolved with today's ideals? Yeah, unintentionally, everything that you said. Yes, I agree with you. Who was it for?
Who is it for?
Horny
teens.
boys.
Horny boys.
Yeah, okay.
Young,
okay,
horny.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
No, I didn't like it at all. Well, this might be more rude, but to me, this is another one of those like, was this even a movie?
I feel like this was more of a movie than
Jingle All the Way 2?
One. Oh, well, yeah.
Way more.
That's not hard.
Yeah.
But I feel like this one at least held my interest, where the first one, I like just couldn't even keep watching the movie because it was so boring.
But yes, but to me, this was just a ride at Universal Studios.
100%, yeah.
That's all it was to me. And as a movie, I'm like, was it though? I feel like I was just on a ride the whole time. Did you like it?
I had fun with it, yeah. Like, I mean, I think a lot of it is because I just ignored all of, like, so much of the boner jokes and all of the men around Megan Fox, and it was just kind of like, you get it, girl. Like, you do your thing.
Yeah.
Will I watch the second one? Yes. Will I like it? I don't know. We'll find out. But I think I also probably just needed a break from the week. So this was a nice break.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I love how much you hated this.
Yes. It was so weird. It was so bad. I will be watching the second one. I'm on the same page. I will be watching the second one because again, I need some rhino warthog boyfriend business. Also, I did find some gay fan art. Do you want to see it real quick?
Yes, I do.
So their fingernails are painted, so it's canonically queer.
Oh, I've seen that one. I love that one.
My man.
So cute.
They're so cute. Oh, gosh. I need them to be boyfriends real bad.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening. We love you so much. Please rate and review us. If you do, we would love you so much for doing that. And you can write into us at NOTstalgiaPodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram, NOTstalgiaPod. Find us there. Artwork and music by Eric Lefebvre.
That's me.
Danny Barkley is our editor. And thank you, Eric. This was fun.
Thank you, Jazz. This was also fun. I loved it.
Me too.
Before we sign off, legit though, if you're listening to this, please rate and review. Like, we do say it, but like, it is so important for our visibility. Please, if you're listening to our words right now and you haven't given us 5 stars, just throw them at us. Just go on to Apple Podcasts, just be like, bam,
it's
bam,
so
bam.
quick.
We love it.
You just go.
And then you can even, if you want to write us something, be like, this is great, period, 5 stars, send it. We would be so grateful. Truly, please do it. Anyways, that's my pitch.
Yeah. And thank you to everybody that already has.
Yes.
So that's it. That's the end of the pod. Remember, stay cute.
And stay critical. Bye.
Bye-bye.